Labour councillor Mohammed Afzal won his seat in the Birmingham local election this year, but today he faced his political rival in court. The defeated Liberal Democrat on the left alleges that Labour told lies about him at the polls, and so the election result should be overturned. As this election court starts its first day, Newsnight has uncovered fresh allegations that Labour tried to bribe their way into power in Birmingham Council this year, just 2 years after a judge found that the party had engaged in massive city-wide election fraud. The focus of the allegations this time is Aston, a largely Muslim area which straddles the expressway between Spaghetti Junction and the Bullring. Abdulaziz is a well-known figure locally. Until the May 2007 election, he was the Respect councillor for Aston, but then he lost his seat by 666 votes. He told us he'd heard that Labour had spent thousands of pounds bribing voters.
If there was an electorate does vote you out, that's fine, fairly and squarely. But I felt I was cheated out of my seat. And this was confirmed subsequently when I overheard one of the officials of the Labour Party is saying that they had actually paid about £10,000 for votes in 2007 election. It was just despicable.
I went to meet a community leader, we'll call him Faisal, who says that he was approached by a Labour activist just before the 2007 election.
He says, I'll give you £20 per postal vote. I thought this guy was taking the mick. He had a brown envelope next to him. He pulled out a wad of cash, he pulled out 4 £50 notes and said, here's £200. I didn't take the money, but he kept phoning me. He was asking me for postal votes. He wanted me to leave them unsealed. You don't think someone's going to come and ask you to rig votes and stuff like that.
We met others who told us similar stories, but like Faisal, they wanted to remain anonymous. They say there have been attacks on people who speak out against corruption. There are also allegations of impersonation at polling stations. A source has told me that Asian drug addicts were targeted by Labour activists and paid to impersonate voters at various polling stations throughout the ward. Now, I've tracked down one of these addicts who has agreed to talk to me anonymously.
They got me into a car and they took me to the first destination and they gave me a name and I basically had to memorise that name. I ticked Labour and put it into the box. I came outside, got back into the car and went to different schools. I did it 25 times.
And how much were you paid every time that you went?
I was paid £5 for every vote that I did.
The addict says that he used this money, £125 in all, to buy drugs. This isn't the first time that allegations of electoral fraud have been made in Aston. The area around the Villa ground is mainly Muslim with roots in Pakistan. There's a traditional clan system operating here, which makes it possible to do deals.
Yes, and that Monday the 14th.
According to Ayub Khan, a Liberal Democrat councillor and barrister, this system opens the door to voting fraud.
A lot of South Asian families have a hierarchical structure whereby an elderly member of the community, which is respected within that family, can dictate and succeed in getting the bulk support of the family. And it really boils down to an approach being made to that one individual, a deal struck, and then you've got the votes, which can be several hundred in certain families, and you can bank those votes.
Do you know of instances where that has happened?
Oh yes, yes. It happened clearly in 2004, and I was able to prove that, and I know that it happened in the last election.
Traditionally, 75% of Muslims had voted Labour, but the problem for the party in 2004 was this. After Britain and America invaded Iraq, Muslim support for Labour collapsed ahead of the 2004 elections. Everywhere it seems, apart from here in Aston and another ward, Bordesley Green, where despite having a significant Muslim electorate, there was a massive and unexpected swing towards Labour in the 2004 election. Now, a specially convened election court revealed just why this part of Birmingham had bucked the national trend. It was, according to the judge, due to massive, systematic and organised fraud that would disgrace a banana republic. He said that the Labour Party had engaged in a concerted campaign to use fraudulent postal votes and ruled that there was in fact massive, Birmingham-wide electoral fraud by the Labour Party. Labour supporters deceitfully applied for postal votes in other people's names and stole them. This led to farcical scenes on these streets. Raghib Hassan lifted the lid on the scandal in 2004.
When the postman was bringing the postal vote ballot papers to the people, they were actually stealing it from the letterboxes when the postman was dropping there. They were following the postman everywhere. There were actually 2 or 3 people from particular individual party behind every postman. They knew when the postman was coming. They were bribing the postman, and also the postman was seen actually handing over a black bag full of postal vote applications for the postal vote, and that culminated into a street fight where people tried to stop all this happening.
But it was too late. 2 nights before the election at midnight, police caught Labour red-handed in this warehouse in the act of rigging hundreds of postal ballots. The judge voided the election results in Aston and Wolseley Green, stating that corrupt and illegal practices had been used to get 6 Labour candidates elected. One of those 6 was Mohammed Afzal, a Labour councillor with over 20 years of political experience. He's the same man who's in the election court today, defending allegations that his election team falsely accused his rival candidate of being a fraudster. In 2005, Mohammed Afzal appealed, insisting that he wasn't inside the warehouse when the police turned up. The appeal court said there were procedural shortcomings in the way the judge had dealt with Mohammed Afzal's testimony and the evidence against him, so he was cleared of personal corruption. But the Court of Appeal endorsed the judge's finding of general corruption in Aston, and so Mohammed Afzal was banned from standing in the resulting by-election. However, in the 2007 election, Labour selected Mohammed Afzal as their candidate. It was the way in which that contest was won by Labour which is the subject of today's election court. Mohammed Afzal denies any wrongdoing.
Well, in response to tonight's film, the Labour Party issued the following statement. We're disturbed that the basis of these allegations seems to be testimony from political opponents, the anonymous and a self-confessed drug addict. The Labour Party expects the highest standards of behaviour from our members and representatives, and where these standards are found not to have been met, the strongest disciplinary action is taken.